Welcome everyone, Christine here with a discussion about Yuan Bow of Grand Cathay in Total War Warhammer 3, Immortal Empires, Shadows of Change. Now, as I'm recording this video, we don't really know where Yuan Bow starts in. Wei-jin is mentioned on the scene page, but it's also mentioned that he is ruling Central Cathay. So it could very well be that they do start him somewhere in the Celestial Riverlands, either with Shilong or Shangwu or any of these settlements. And basically one of the things they could do very easily is they could take the Jiangxi rebels over here and give them control on top of them having control of the Nangchang Basin. They could give them control of most of the Celestial Riverlands, and that's how you do it. As for the Jade Custodians over here, either they remove them completely, or they just leave Jiangxi in their control. So they build up armies there, which would hopefully slow down Sinich. But looking at that situation, as well as a situation where he would start with Wei-jin, and I think personally would make sense either way. Like, you could start him in Central Cathay, it would make sense because that is the province he rules. But given what they've mentioned about him so far, it's just as likely, and I think more likely, that he would start in Wei-jin, or close to Wei-jin. So let's go with either assumption. And of course, both of them could end up being wrong, and I might be eating my words when they do make a gameplay reveal about him and his starting positions, probably over the next couple of days during the week. But here is here's how things would unfold, assuming no other major changes do occur in the map. Like, assuming no other major changes occur with the factions over here in Grand Cathay. So if you're going to start in Wei-jin or in the surrounding areas, likely some minor faction is going to be added controlling 2 of the 3 regions in the Imperial Road. And you also have the beastmen that the Celestial Loyalists start at war with. So you do have the Dragon Horn tribe. Now, you're going to have an annoying relationship with them, because what they're going to do, they're going to start nearby, close enough that they can burn one of these settlements to the ground. And one of the things that you're going to have to worry about, beyond whichever faction you start at war with, whatever rebel faction, unless they remove those beastmen, you're also likely going to have to deal with them as well. So you have to be mindful about that. But yes, unify the province very quickly, gain control of it, and then the best thing for you to do would either be to rush for Kunlan or to rush for Pomei. There's pros and cons with both approaches. If you rush for Kunlan, especially on a higher difficulty, then you can prevent Snitch from getting it, which is exactly what I ended up doing in this particular playthrough. And though keep in mind, I did confederate the Celestial Loyalists. If, however, you go for Pomei first, then you're making it easier for Miao Ying to expand. Assuming you do start in Wei-jin, you're making it easier for her to expand. You take this territory, you sell it to her, and then you will gain quite a bit of money. And Miao Ying will then either do her job in terms of holding the Great Bastion, which is, by the way, the job she has in the lore and also the game. So she'll be your northern barrier, allowing you to focus on the other issues. The thing that's most important to do very, very quickly is eliminate Snitch. The reason this ends up being so very important is that Skaven, they don't necessarily have the ability of steamrolling, but because they do have the stock stance, that means they can very easily sneak up on you and eliminate your armies with ambushes, and Snitch is an expert at this. So one of the things you really want to prevent Snitch from doing is from taking a provincial capital, because that will vastly improve his economy. Like, I've seen a situation like containing Skaven is all about preventing them from gaining control of entire provinces if you can. The problem with dealing with Snitch as either Miao Ying or Xiao Ming is the fact that, generally speaking, Snitch will obviously take control of the province, and then he'll gain multiple armies. Like, he has multiple armies over here, and this is after I already defeated several of them in this situation. Now, after you deal with Snitch, your next main target is going to be Lokir. Now, Lokir is also going to be annoying because Dark Elves produce a lot of armies, have a lot of money very, very easily. Like every single income building that Dark Elves do get will give them a ridiculous sum of money. So we're looking at 200 for a tier 1 building, and like it starts adding up quite very easy. Like you look at this building, it's 700 income, and you can bet your ass that the AI is certainly going to take advantage of that situation for their own devices. But at the same time, you also have to worry about the situation in the north, because in this case, for instance, the Turtle Gate fell to village, so I had to actually rush armies here, including Miao Ying, in order to hold back the forces of chaos. Then obviously I could move Miao Ying to the south, but clearly there are problems that you do have to worry about. The Imperial Wardens do a pretty poor job at defending the Great Bastion, and one of the problems that you encounter in a Miao Ying campaign like this one is the fact that you're having to deal with Snitch to the south, Lokir to the east, and all the issues in the north. And that's how a campaign as Yan Bo is also likely going to unfold, but of course to the added benefit that you are going to have Miao Ying supporting you as well. If, however, you start in the center, then that's a significantly easier starting position, I have to say. Because even if you do have to spend all of the time, effort, and energy to reunify the Celestial Riverlands, at least you don't have to deal with the basement early on, and you don't have to divide your forces between a northern front and a southern front, and also an eastern front as well against Lokir. So instead, what you'd be doing over here, dependent on where you start, like if you start with Shillong, then you're going to obviously move west, reunify this province, because you're likely not going to start with more than 1 or 2 settlements. Or if you do start in Shangwu, for instance, that would, by the way, starting Shangwu would, by the way, be the easier choice, because starting with the minor settlement is not necessarily a downside, actually. In fact, it can be a significant upside. Because those initial barracks, you want to build them in those minor settlements instead of the provincial capital. So when you do capture provincial capital, you can focus all those building slots on economic buildings. Like with Miao Ying over here, one of the things that you will waste money early on is the fact that you do start with the barracks in Nangao, and you do want to actually upgrade it initially before transferring it to the minor settlement, so that will cost you money and time to do. So if you were to start to Shangwu, then yeah, it's easy. Just move east and then move north, deal with all the factions, because the south is secured by the Burning Wind Nomads. But yeah, reunify the Celestial Riverlands, and then either go for the Nangchang Basin, or just directly march on Singpo. Now, eliminating Singpo is essential for dealing with Snitch, because that's where he can recruit quite a few units from without any structure, because he does start with that landmark over there. He also has the gem mine shaft that he's likely going to build for a significant amount of income. So if you really want to neuter Snitch, taking Singpo makes that significantly easier. And then, yeah, take over the Forest of the Moon, and then Nangchang if you haven't taken it already, and then dealing with the Jade River Delta, marching north, taking Wei-jin, assuming you do start in the Celestial Riverlands. That's how I would approach the situation, and I have to say that it does seem quite very likely that with his addition, Cathay as a whole is likely going to snowball out of control. I mean, already on Legendary, very hard campaigns, you have this situation that keeps unfolding again and again, where Cathay just becomes dominant in the east, and then they start building massive armies. Like, they eliminate all these other factions, they hold the Great Bastion, or recapture the Great Bastion, and then eventually push west. And while obviously Grimgor is over there to contain them, but they do become really powerful. It'll be interesting to see how the situation will unfold here with AI, but absent some other changes, I think like Snitch and Lokir are not going to be able to deal with 3 legendary lords of Grand Cathay when they can't even deal with 2. In particular, Xiao Ming ends up being far more powerful. I should mention, however, that I do believe that if you start with Wei-jin, then Xiao Ming could still end up being the more powerful Enduring Lord to actually play. Because the reason Xiao Ming is so really powerful is that, unlike Miaoying, compared to Miaoying, like, Xiao Ming doesn't have to worry about his western flank, his southern flank, or anything like that. He only has to deal with threats in his direct path of expansion. So what you do in a Xiao Ming campaign is, yeah, you take Han Yu, you take Zhen Wu, then you march north and take Xiangyang Shrine, turn around, take Taizu, then probably send another army over here, throw everything, get Snitch, wipe him out, then go for Lokir, very easy path. And then at this point you might have to help the Imperial Wardens or Miaoying or do some things in the north. But regardless, you put some effort in the north, but reunify the south. The most annoying thing about the only limiting factor is that you have to fucking chase down a Kai, which is always an annoying bloody thing to do in any particular campaign, because he's just gonna run around with his fucking horde armies that are gonna, and he's just gonna be able to outrun you. But you end up taking a lot of territory. So if you start with Wei-jin and you have to divert forces to the north to hold the Great Bastion while also having to expand to the south, that is probably going to slow you down, though the benefit is you might be the one that starts closest, like regardless of whether or not you start in Wei-jin or the Celestial Riverlands, you're going to start closest to Snitch. And Snitch is the main bottleneck to overcome in a Cathay and Caravan as currently is. So being able to take him out quickly before he starts getting his units, like when he only has clan rats, night runners, gut runners, but really clan rats, Skaven slaves, and night runners, that's the easiest part of the campaign. Snitch is a lot harder to deal with, and Skaven in general are a lot harder to deal with once they start getting things like warp grinders and artillery and other units, other higher tier units. Like eliminating Snitch before he has the opportunity to get those kind of units is essential. Or what they could do for this faction, and it wouldn't surprise me if they do it, is that you could have multiple starting positions, similar to how Elfarian does it. Like Elfarian does start with one, with obviously Torre of Rest, but his army starts in the Badlands, or a similar situation to Malice Darkblade. I would hope that they don't necessarily do it, to be clear, or if they're going to have those kind of different starting positions, you actually do have a genuine choice, as opposed to the annoying thing you have to do it as either Elfarian or Malice Darkblade if you want to actually use their starting cities. Like, I would vastly prefer it is if you do have that kind of choice. Let's say they could put him in the West, put him in the Empire. Wouldn't that be a wonderful thing to deal with? Another legendary Lord of the Empire, just to rub the salt in for the Empire if they were to put a Cathayan legendary Lord as an alternate starting position. Though granted, it probably would only happen if you were to play him. But as an alternative start, yeah, they could put him opposite to the Changeling and have him deal with everything over there. So you would have those 3 legendary Lords in Close Connection, but you would still have a settlement in Cathay. I think if they're going to do that, I would hope that you actually do have a choice. Like, you start a campaign and you do get the choice. Okay, do you want to have, like, say, a start in the Empire? Or do you want to have a start in Grand Cathay? And dependent on where you choose, your legendary lord, the army that he has, would go there. That's one way they could handle it. But they haven't mentioned anything about that. Interestingly, though, the trailer does show that shot of an Imperial bowing before Yanbo, but whatever that means, we don't really know. But it does seem quite likely to me, based on the Steam page, based on other things as well, that he is likely going to start in either Wei-jin or surrounding areas, though it wouldn't be surprising if he started in Celestial Riverlands. My speculation with an alternative start in, say, the Empire or close to it is based on the notion that they might want to have those 3 legendary lords close enough together. So Kislev, Tzinch, and Cathay close enough together to have that clash between them. Anyway, that's all there is to say. Costini here, signing out. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and enable notifications, and stay tuned for more.